Hey everybody, Dr. Sean here. Have you ever thought about liposuction? Well, you better think again. Watch this video because I'm going to explain to you why you do not want to have liposuction. Yes, liposuction is associated with a lot of side effects and dangerous procedural consequences, and I'm sure the plastic surgeons are going to be super upset about me saying that. Maybe the incidence is pretty low, but you don't want to risk it. What they don't know about is what you don't know about, and you need to find this out in this video, okay? So I'm going to start by showing you what they do with the liposuction. They go down and suck out a type of fat that actually you want to have, okay? It's beneficial fat. So I got this interesting request that comes up from time to time from followers, and it's about liposuction, what I think about it. All right, so let's take a look from the inside out, okay? What is happening with liposuction? Okay, so this is a cross-section through the abdomen in this manner here, from anterior to posterior, okay? And this is the abdominal anterior abdomen. This is the back. And in liposuction, they're removing this fat here, the anterior aspect of the abdomen. So it's just below the skin, but it doesn't invade the invasive cavity. Well, this stuff is actually beneficial. It's your subcutaneous fat, and particularly a certain type of subcutaneous fat that they're removing is superficial subcutaneous fat, which is concentrated in your area of your anterior abdomen. In your back, you got the bad kind of deep subcutaneous fat. Now, some people ask, why can't they go in and remove this stuff? Because if you follow me, you know visceral fat, the deep stuff in here, is very dangerous, associated with the big killers like heart attacks and strokes and cancer and neurodegenerative conditions like dementia and Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative conditions. So this stuff's bad, but they can't remove it by liposuction because it's really difficult to remove. This stuff is easier to remove, but the deep visceral fat is even more dangerous to remove and more complicated because it's just like tentacles inside you. The only way to really get rid of that stuff is through your lifestyle. And guess what? The better way to get rid of this stuff, if you want a little bit to get rid of it, is lifestyle too. But you do not want to remove all of it. I mean, it's really beneficial. We're going to get into that. All right, so first of all, just Google this, liposuction gone wrong. Okay, you should at least be aware of the side effects and take a look at those pictures and ask yourself, do I want to risk that? Even if it's infrequent. And I'm going to say right away that probably in the hands of a very qualified surgeon, the incidence of these side effects can be really well managed, but not always. And that's why you're going to sign a release that if you get a screwed up, jacked up looking, abdomen, like in some of these photographs here, you're not going to be able to sue that physician. So I'm just telling you, you really do not want to have this procedure because one, the complications, but two, it actually is going to make you physiologically less healthy. They're trying to sell it to you and making you look good, but you are going to ruin your health. You may even, by removing this type of fat, increase your obesity. Yes, and the worst kind, probably visceral fat. So do not do this. Dr. Sean is coming out loud and clear. Do not have liposuction done. Here's some of those pictures of complications. That's not a good look that you want to have. And I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm just saying really pay attention and really ask yourself, do I want to risk that? All right, now let's get into what is going on. Why is this type of fat beneficial, a certain type of fat beneficial that they're removing, the superficial subcutaneous fat, and why it's so different? Okay, so let's get into this particular model. So I've talked about deep subcutaneous fat, which is from this black line to this black line here. You can see that black line going around. The superficial subcutaneous fat is this that's superficial to that black line, okay? That stuff is beneficial. It's protective against cardiovascular disease, against inflammation, against fatty liver disease, against cancer. The big players, you want it. It is associated with increased lifespan. So you do want to have some of that subcutaneous fat. You just want it to be superficial. And this is it predominantly up in this region up here. And so when you get that liposuction, they're sucking away the stuff that you want to have. Now, why is it beneficial? What is it in particular about superficial subcutaneous fat that gets removed when they do liposuction that's beneficial? Well, don't just take my word on it. Go to Google or go to ChatGPT AI and type in this word here, adiponectin. I got it spelled up there for you, okay? It's just like it sounds, adiponectin. And you can find a lot of studies and interesting articles. Here's a nice one I found for the Cleveland Clinic that explains this particular one. But again, in short, it reduces your mortality associated with cardiovascular disease and other forms of chronic disease. It's actually protective. So spend some time, if you're contemplating having a liposuction, Googling that word, and then ask yourself, do I really want to get rid of that? You don't. You want that protection. Actually, I have come quite a bit away from this concept of showing my six-pack. You know, I want to have a thin layer of that superficial subcutaneous fat. So let's look at a couple of examples, okay? Good and bad. I like to show those examples. So here's a really good abdominal scan, very little visceral fat. They have a nice layer of superficial subcutaneous fat, that little layer, a thin layer of fat that you want on your abdomen, okay? You do not want to have that absent and gone. Now, in bodybuilders and people that are like physique builders, they're eliminating that subcutaneous fat through a variety of different techniques, and they're pretty good at it. They've been doing it for decades. But unfortunately, they're eliminating the good stuff, the adiponectin producing superficial subcutaneous fat. And they're oftentimes completely ignoring their visceral fat. So they got these great six-pack super definition and these bulging abdomens. And that's why you find a lot of bodybuilders don't look so good. They age poorly because they got this ticking time bomb, invisible obesity, radioactive fat inside of them. But God bless them, they got no fat on the outside, so they think they're healthy. It's a competition, but it's not a competition for health. It's just competition how they think that it looks good. So Dr. Sean is coming out loud and clear to tell you want that superficial fat. So here's a lot of deep subcutaneous fat, a little bit of superficial. And again, we see that association with a lot of visceral fat. So you get rid of your superficial fat, that's what the bad stuff you want to get rid of. Now, here is that same scan, this one right here. Let's look at it in cross-section. So you can see very little visceral fat and a nice flat abdomen. This is the back, this is the abdomen. And I've recently did a video on it, and to highlight this really nice, healthy looking abdomen, we'll take a look at what this person looks like. They're actually just about my age. They're a little bit younger, 59, I'm 60. So this is Carolyn Labochier. I've done other videos on her posts. I found her on Instagram. She's a model. She's very attractive. She's got over 500,000 followers. And she looks good because she has so little visceral fat. But what she does have is a little bit of subcutaneous fat. So that's good. You don't want that harsh look. I personally don't think that women that have six packs are really beautiful, and I don't even like it on guys anymore. I think a little thin layer of fat that basically says, I'm living well. When I go out and hunt, I have a little bit of excess food available for me, and I store it as that energy. And I got some reserve going, but not too much. You still look good. So that's what you want. You don't want your reserve inside here. You don't want any visceral fat, okay? You want your reserve to be your subcutaneous fat, but not too much. And here's Dr. Sean, okay? So this is me recently in the past couple of weeks on a walk, and I was outside sprinting, got my moccasins on, and I hadn't even sprinted yet. I had not worked out. So this is just me, regular. I think you should look good and be an influencer on the internet, looking good without working out and trying to look. That's just the way I am, okay? And it's because I manage perfectly my muscle to fat ratios, paying very, very close attention to my deep subcutaneous fat, my visceral fat, and now my superficial subcutaneous fat, okay? And I really optimized that. So that's what you should be doing, to pay attention to that and working so you look good. Here's my latest MRI scan, okay? So I got that little layer of subcutaneous fat going on my abdomen, okay? And I have almost no visceral fat. So you want to have a nice shape, and that's a feature of a healthy abdomen is the shape and the amount of visceral fat that you have in there and the amount of muscle to fat ratio. So the MRI affords this kind of look and an ability to focus in maximally on what you got to do to improve your body, okay? And when you do that, all your chronic diseases reverse, all the problems you have, and you get rid of that visceral fat. So that's why I find it very important. So let's look at a couple other examples. All right, so this person that they have visceral fat, but not a huge amount. They mostly have subcutaneous fat around their body, but not as much visceral fat. So some big glove handles. This is a woman. But they do have visceral fat, so they do have deposition of fat within their muscle. But this is a postmenopausal woman right around menopausal age, and they are starting to accumulate visceral fat and transitioning away from mostly superficial, mostly subcutaneous fat, to now they're starting to lay down that visceral fat. And we see that happen with menopause. So you want to be very attentive to the fact that as you're going through that change of life, if you're female at menopause, you really want to be aware that you're going to starting to lay down visceral fat, and do my strategies to prevent that from happening, improving your lifestyle. So let's look at a premenopausal woman, not even perimenopausal, but this is a young lady, client that has very little visceral fat, very healthy, nice muscles, and a nice layer of subcutaneous fat. So they've got a really nice abdominal scan, just a little bit of visceral fat. They're getting rid of that, and they're optimizing. So even a young person, has visceral fat, and they can work with me to optimize their body. So, and that's just going to be with them forever. So what do you got to do? What can you do to get rid of the bad fat and keep the good stuff? All right, so this is a series of exams, MRIs, and there's a lot of visceral fat, and they have a good amount of subcutaneous fat. And then watch how much they change over a period of time, eliminating that visceral fat by cutting out processed carbohydrates, okay? A dramatic change in the bad fats over this period of time, it's 35 weeks, by just cutting out processed carbs, not exercising at all. So a dramatic change just from diet without exercise. So that's the most important thing. You've got to get control of your diet to optimize those muscle to fat ratios. Now, not as much change in the subcutaneous fat. It did go down, so processed cubes, eliminating those processed carbs and processed foods in general will reduce the excess amount of subcutaneous fat, but preferentially the bad fat is what gets eliminated. Isn't that great? So you keep more of the good stuff and you get rid of the bad stuff by cutting out the bad stuff, processed carbs, okay? So don't listen to anybody who's telling you a calorie is a calorie. No, it is quality more than quantity. That's what I say consistently. And I track these foods and I see what happens. Don't have afforded the opportunity to use this magic looking glass that I have, being able to do this MRI and cutting out specific foods, adding them in. So processed carbs, really bad. You don't want to get those. All right, so here are my strategies. You can take a screenshot of those to help you figure out what you got to do. Very obvious, okay? Easy. Cut out the processed foods. Eat healthy meat, ideally 100% grass-fed, grass-finished, game meat, and ideally, if you can get that, and cutting out processed foods. So if you're vegan or you're vegetarian and you're following me, get rid of those processed carbohydrates. If you don't want to eat any meat, If you're not there, you know, you're not part of that, then at least cut out the processed carbohydrates, okay, and eat food, clean food in whole form. And then fermented foods. Hopefully you guys can get on board with fermented foods, which I got a list of them there, and then practice extended fasting. Work your way up to start embracing fasting, which is something ancestrally we would have done. We didn't always have food. And believe it or not, it's those kind of experiences, those hormetic experiences that improve you. So fasting is a great thing. Don't do too much at once. You want to slowly introduce it because I don't want you to get discouraged. And then do maximum intensity exercise. What is my favorite exercise? Sprinting. Sprinting is the very best. I have videos on it. You can click and read about at the end of this video. You can click on it and learn about sprinting. It's a fantastic, and I'll be coming out with a master class on this that I'll put out. I'll cover much more comprehensive because it's blowing up. Sprinting is a fantastic thing, and I want you to benefit from it. All right, and then embrace stress hormesis, these kind of practices. So saunas, dry finish sauna, cold plunge. You want to use blood flow restriction bands, and then consider altitude training and blood donation. All these hormetic kind of practices, that which does not kill you makes you stronger, but not too much of it. Just the right amount, short, intense, and brief, and infrequent. Not too much. It's where I think distance running is a problem because people do it too much for too long and too frequently, and they're wearing out their muscles and causing too much oxidation and too much inflammation. All right, and the rest of these, you're going to have to read about them or study them, or best yet, come to me, because I specialize in the eradication of bad fat and building good fat and good tissue by using MRI and then tracking all these changes on the outside of your body so you look good and perform well. So I am the world's expert in this particular area, utilizing these techniques. So if you want to consider working with me, I still have some slots I reserve for very motivated people to study them. You can find out more on my website, www.drseanomara. You can follow me on Instagram and X or Twitter and find out more information about working with me. And if you like this video, please give it a like, share it with other people who might be thinking about doing a liposuction to hopefully cause them to pause and change their minds so that they can preserve that good fat and understand why and learn about researching it. And then, as always, love comments, love questions. I love my followers. I love subscribers because it helps me get this message out. My passion is to try to solve humanity's biggest problem, which is chronic disease. So help me be able to do that by forwarding this to other people. Give it a like, subscribing to my channel, and following me on my other platforms. All right. Well, we will see you on another biological optimizing video. Dr. Sean out.